Thank each and every one of you for coming tonight. We have, please say your names, each of you in the group. We're being faithful to the small group. And to my left here,
Alexander.
Jorge.
Rebecca.
John.
okay, thank you very much, each and every one of you. The New York pace here reminds me that tonight when we start a small group, we need to pause for a moment. We need to breathe in, because whenever we come to a small group, we bring from outside to the group. And so sometimes we have to do is sometimes it's what we call leave outside what was outside and come into the small group. So each of you, I hope you've been having a good week. Were you able to read the...
Personally, I took a look at it, and I found it highly interesting, especially one point they made about this DNA, this compassionate DNA, not only having us be compassionate to one another, but even to build bonds with strangers. This compassionate DNA, I mean, it's going more specific than that, than just compassionate, but I really find it interesting that it is some kind of device that is triggered inside that wants us to bond with strangers. And the reason why it was interesting was because normally a stranger is a stranger to you, but somehow inside of you, you wouldn't feel great if everyone was a stranger. Something inside of you doesn't want a stranger to be a stranger. You want to make it go further than that. So to me, that was beautiful.
So what is that something inside of you? You're saying. What is that something that's inside of you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I would call it your conscience is drawing you to make that bond, because you know it's right. Your conscience does not feel comfortable when you feel far away from people around you.
Be in relationship with others. And our nature is to be connected with others. Is that right? In other words, you entered into the element of conscience, but I remember him talking about conscience. I remember him talking about being of the nature of being of even animals. He talks about animals also having that caring instinct, that compassion, that sense of, reaching, helping. So, what do you think? I mean, in other words, and if that means that if I don't do something for somebody else who is a stranger, as Jorge mentioned very well, that means then that I'm losing out. Because if I don't, what do I lose? Because I also benefit by helping someone else. Not only do they benefit, but my very being is more fulfilled. You follow? Any of you, can you follow up on that?
Babies, young little kids, so compassionate, can play with other kids without even knowing them. You take them to the park and they find friends like that. You see them running around. I always wonder what is it about us, and when we're older, it's kind of more harder to make. Maybe not necessarily harder, but it depends on what you've been through and what has made you change. Because what this is basically saying, we're born to be friendly. We're born friends. It's why little kids make friends so easily. Why, if you get hurt, they like, what happened to you? Because not everybody cares if something happens to you.
I think Rebecca's going into the realm of nature versus nurture. A very criminological and psychological debate, historically, And yeah, I think it's very interesting. Personally, I feel what affects how we behave. I think it's very difficult to say whether it's your nature, whether it's how you are, or what you're around. Your environment. I think it's very hard to say. It's really this one, or really that one.
But we can see sometimes in homes, families where the children are in a very supportive atmosphere. They go out and they might play with anybody and everybody, and they don't look at colors. They don't look at your economic bracket. If you have come from a rich home or a poor home, isn't that? Then it's you've been raised that way, right? And then some almost have a nature, you might say too, is when some come out of their DNA. And he's saying here that there's a DNA in all of this. He didn't say there was exception. In other words, that there's new findings now that, like in this I Am film movie, the director is talking about also that it's by nature in our DNA to cooperate. It's in our nature, our DNA, meaning it's in our blood. There's a strong saying that says it's also in our nature to serve somebody. But maybe New York isn't. Maybe New York, at the same time, there's a lot of crime, or the big cities. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, is it the city that really sometimes fights with that nature, that compassionate nature?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for things that you see regularly, like people laying down in the street, I guess people aren't so compassionate towards that. But when people see something like, maybe people in distress or in need, from not just like being, your typical average homeless person, then they I mean, regardless, when they see, I think when people see a homeless person out in the street or someone in need, something inside them feels like they want to help that person out, but they just like, they don't. But if something big like 9/11 happens, then that impulse, compassion, to want to help, because I don't think we enjoy seeing other people hurt or other people, distressed. If something like that ever does come up, like we feel like we want to help, like something inside us just pushes us, like, oh, I should do something. So yeah.
Is that with you? Is that what happens to you?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes,
John, what is compassion?
Compassion is maybe to be able to see other people's needs and problems and do as much as you can to provide whatever that person needs. They become leaders to their lives. I think with compassion is similar. We compassionate.
Because it's interesting that there's talk now about that even Charles Darwin in his book Descent of Man, 86 times he mentions cooperation and love. 3 times he mentions survival of the fittest. In other words, throughout the theory, the bad guy about Charles Darwin has been duped as being a bad guy, as always saying that we're basically warlike people who want to have blood and violence and all kinds of evil nature, because in even such a person, Charles Darwin, was really even found in his study of man that man also first of all has a strong tendency towards cooperation. Somewhere we've learned some kind of definition of what is a human being, what is human nature.
Sorry, go on.
It's very true what that you said. So we have to re-nurture it, because sometimes every time we see something happen, we want to do something. But I think that our experiences or what we've heard, that people have gotten scammed. Just like a couple of weeks ago, there was this lady that she lived a good life, but then she pretended to be homeless and used to walk down the street to get money. And they followed her and they found out that she had money. So we've been scammed so much that we still have compassion in it, because compassion doesn't mean you have to do something. It just means that you have to feel what other people are feeling, is what the other people is.
That's interesting.
Very, very
It's
interesting.
feeling.
Right.
But we didn't, because then we started thinking, what if she really didn't need that, and I could have given it to somebody else. You start debating yourself if you could have helped them or could have just helped them to scam. And
So with what you're saying then, sometimes we reason. When reason comes in, sometimes we start to analyze something and we suspect, what are they going to do with, and we have doubt, what are they going to do with this money? Are they going to eat or are they going to drink? Are they going to eat or are they going to smoke? This is a good idea for me to do this.
But you know what's
in this respect.
It's interesting.
So hear what you're saying.
just to finish before, sometimes we see a lot of commercials about kids with cancer. We know they're real. We know they have cancer. We see them. But why don't we all pick up the phone and give that 8 cents they asked for? You know, for me, that's the question really here. We know those people exist. We know they have cancer. We know this epidemic is happening. Like really, like all that is happening. But what's that holding us back? You know.
Story. So you hear one story, it goes in the neighborhood, goes here at 43rd Street, maybe even a story. Did you hear this? Did you hear this? Did you hear the paper? The New York Post said this about this and that guy who's begging and actually rich and has a nice place out in Long Island. You know, so it really was poor. Wow, I could do that too. So the next time you see somebody who's homeless, you say, "No, he's not." And you got better tennis shoes than I do. You got Nikes. I've got, I got Payless.
I'd like to bring up a point.
So sometimes the experiences cause us to stop. Part of this argument was talking about the science is showing now there's no study of the brain. In the brain, we have a neuron effect where we are moved in the brain and ourselves when we see someone who suffers. I mean, and that's not choice. It's not by saying it's a choice. It's my nature. And when I see somebody who's
maybe needs something else, right? A friend to share or different needs. So one of the challenges of being compassionate is you have to determine when you decide to help. You need to determine what extent you have to help this person, and for that you have to develop that capacity through the spirit.
That's right.
Because people see someone who is begging money and they give $1 and they feel like, I'm
are American and they're born here in this country, and I'm not even a citizen here, and they're asking me for money, and it's like I can get kicked out of this country at any minute. The cops can pull me over, they can throw me in jail, and I can get shipped back home. These people were born here, they have citizenship, they have homeless shelters, they could get food, they could get welfare, they could work, they have social security, and they have all these resources that they can go to, but they choose not to do it.
But they choose. But yet, we have to look at something that's going on here. It's a typical mind-body situation in this country that's going on. The debate is already in motion. The person you're saying, whether the person may be, not really an American, is not an American, period. So then this person has already got a debate going on. Because in other words, something's going on, something's happening with this person. That they even discuss that with you, discuss it within their own mind. It means that something's happening, you see, and that there's an awareness. We're talking, compassion can be a level of awareness that we have about. Now, whether the person is a criminal or not, compassion side might say, enter the debate. I have a debate. That, in other words, whether the person is a criminal or a victim. In other words, a criminal can be a victim of circumstances, being in a bankrupt situation, or if a family is homeless and only knows he wants to get food. So I'm going to go in, he or she's going to go into the store and steal food. Maybe setting themselves up to go to jail, but that's what they decide to do. Who brought that about?
Right.
Did these people bring it about? Why are people in this country, such a wealthy country, why are people out of the streets? And even to enter that discussion means that the compassion expands to be more of where you have to become more informed.
Person, because I think we can discern whether or not we're compassionate. And I think being a compassionate person is not necessarily, as you were saying, someone who's just giving, but is the person who is aware of the other person's situation and feels some kind of feel something towards them, something that wants to help them. Me, in my case, I do feel, I don't really give to the homeless people I see, but I feel something very powerful for each and every person. I'm like, man, I start wondering, why are they there? Because I don't think anyone really wants to be homeless. A lot of times we just say, when you put yourself in a situation, think about do they who really wants to be homeless?
Well, I know someone who likes to be homeless. Looking for money, and I could watch him hours and hours how much people gave him food and money and several times people came and gave him a business card and say, I like you, you funny, you very I like your personality. I'll give you a job. Take my car and
Really?
come. And what he did with the car is he threw the car into the garbage. He wanted to be that because he was making a lot of money, and I don't know what he did with the money, but it seems to me that he was getting more money than what the regular person gained.
So you're saying he wanted to be there?
Yeah.
He wanted.
Even if they don't need it. Some people will not beg money even if they die of starvation. So how we can determine who needs more than the other person? I think this is a real challenge, especially
A job, and et cetera. So I think that we're faced in a time where our whole system has to be re-looked at. And rather than, as you said, the person there who thinks all criminals should be killed, but instead of killing the criminal, we should kill the crime and care for the criminal. In other words, we have to, if we're going to change the system, we have to, it was to say, you can love the sinner, but hate sin. So we have to hate crime and love the criminal. Something there about education and the needs. Who draws and decides who's inside the circle and outside the circle? Economic, educational, medical, also in the terms of medicine. Who gets medical care and who doesn't? An article here on 8 Lessons of Leadership by Nelson Mandela, and that we can quickly share this together. I want you to that we can really look at these 8 points here in the small group, because we're discussing here compassion also is related to absence of fear. It's inspiring others to move beyond it. Number 2, lead from the front, but don't leave your base behind. Can someone take number 3 and let's get
Let others believe they are in the front.
number 4,
Know your enemy and learn about his favorite sport.
number 5,
Keep your friends close and your rivals even closer.
number 6,
appearances matter, and remember to smile.
number 7,
Nothing is black or white.
number 8.
Quitting is leading to.
Okay, so let's choose any one of those that you'd like to, and let's go ahead and see where we go on this. Feel, what does that mean? What?
Has to make. Ultimately, the key to understand Mandela is those 27 years in prison. I understand it, but I did that's an interesting point. Quitting is leading to. Like, what does that really mean? Quit being a leader, or quit leading? Like, I don't know.
It means in other words, as I understand it, he's saying here, it doesn't mean to quit being a leader, but it means the leader is to quit his strategy and even say, I made a mistake, and I'm going to change my practice, my policy. I made a decision, but I think the decision was not good. Whether it's Iraq or Vietnam or whatever it might be, or we might decide even that quick loans out for the banks rather than for the many homeless and the bankrupt family. So in other words, to really look seriously hard and maybe change, and even in doing that, say, I was wrong. I was wrong doing this. And I hurt a lot of people. So let's change it. And I want some people here to help me and give me the right information. Because leaders don't always have the right information. They always look at the sunny side and they look at the difficult side of what they're doing. So that means, doesn't mean quit the leading position, or lead the leading call.
I'd like to share. I'd like to share my favorite one. Well, not my favorite one, but one that caught my attention, which is appearances matter, and remember to smile. So I think sometimes, as far as the facial expression, this is where I'm getting to. You know, even I've noticed personally in my life when I think it's very, very common in the United States, I think, the culture of like facial expressions, you know, making all these faces that I think it's really, really United States culture. But I think when we learn to really have a respectful and neutral face sometimes when we listen to someone, or a content face when we're approaching someone, is very key. I've noticed in conversations that I've had, when I simply the way my eyes look at someone, how open my eyes are, completely changes the way they're delivering their idea to me. You know, so I think it's very, 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 very important to watch out for our facial expressions. You know, they may make someone feel, you know, why did he make that face? You know, so if we if we keep a sane and peaceful face, I think people are more willing to speak to us. You know, and if they do speak to us, more willing to keep talking to us. I really like that.
I've heard before said that you can tell a liar.
Oh yeah. Well, before I give a testimony, but what soothes me, what allows me to give it with confidence, is when I overcome that emotion. You know, but it's completely fine to feel that. Completely fine. You know, I'm sure the most strongest speakers have that tension inside, but they just chop it. You know, they were like, man, God, you know, like this. So I completely, really like what you said about that point, you know.
And I like what we're talking tonight, because we're talking about saying, we weren't trying to convince each other to be more compassionate, you're not compassionate, you're being too compassionate, you're not compassionate. But the point being is for the life of a compassionate person who decides to really release that compassion is a difficult situation. It's not easy. In this society we're living in right now, there's so much danger, there's so much suffering, and there's so much need, you know, that tonight we had a good discussion, and time flies with us when we come together. And if you'd like to say something that was meaningful for you tonight, in this group here, we're going to conclude now here in about a minute. And about tonight was rewarding for you in the small group discussion, because I realize how this is valuable for us, and that we could take this time together and share with people outside.
I'm just so glad that you know, we were able to discuss, as we always do, you know, not point fingers at each other's, and not, you know, say who's right and who's wrong, but just really share our heart and be open with one another. Thank you guys.
Yeah, it's good, because you realize here that many times we feel that somebody's always right, and somebody's always wrong. But we're saying here, nobody's right and nobody's wrong.
Yeah.
We're sharing, we're discussing, we're in dialogue. Okay? Okay. So did you want to share something?
No, that it was a good discussion we had tonight. I think that we all basically got our points out. You know, there was nobody overshadowing over anybody. You know, it was good.
You like that?
Yeah, I liked it.
That's a good, interesting point, overshadowing. Okay, John?
And I think in the process of learning what leadership means, compassion is very important, because it's one of the qualities of a leader. Right? And then today we could go in depth and really understand deeply the meaning of compassion that will help us to become better leaders in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, personally,
Short.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Okay.
I really liked what I remember. I think you were mentioning it. Maybe it was one of the lessons that you know, you don't always have to be in the picture. I forgot, but you definitely mentioned something about, you know, we have to, like, oh yeah, about leading from the back and not always having to be in the picture. it actually literally had an effect on me because sometimes I feel like I'm like in every picture.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to finish tonight. I want to thank each and every one of you. It was wonderful to meet you tonight because I see more and more that the group of us, okay, our group, colloquium, a group here is becoming more involved, engaging, and we're discussing and we trust each other that we can talk and hear each other. Here at Loving Life Ministry, I want to thank you for coming tonight and joining with us, everyone. And I ask you to remember, it only takes a spark to get a fire going. Have a good week, and thank you very much, each and every one of you. Okay?